Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Starbucks. Smooth, bright, deliciously crafted. Introducing Starbucks Sansera Blend, their smoothest, brightest coffee yet. It's a new kind of light roast, one that's packed with so much flavor, it shines no matter how you brew it. So go ahead and try it hot, iced, black, or with a splash of creamer. Visit athome.starbucks.com/Sansera-blend-coffee to bring Starbucks Sansera Blend home.
Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, 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 come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means. That's Stefan Krajisnik, and that is Andrew Gillis. As we continue our State of the Program series, we have made it to the back end of the defense with the cornerback room that looks gradually different in 2025 than literally how it's looked for the past 4 seasons. It was funny. Back in the spring, one of the first questions Ryan Day got is that, hey, Ryan, you look out there and there's no Jack Sawyer and there's no JT Tuimoloau, there's no Tyleik Williams, and there's no Emeka Puka and no Travion Henderson. It's like, whoa, this is a whole new era. Like, yeah, Ryan. And Ryan's like, yeah, man, this is crazy. Anyway, we're trying to go win another national championship. Denzel Burke has actually played the most football of anybody over the past 4 years because he is a day one starter at cornerback from the Minnesota game on. And outside of maybe missing games because of injury, he has been the most consistent thing about Ohio State's cornerback room over the past 4 years. And now he is no longer there. And we're getting ready to do an hour and some change long podcast where I'm sure a lot of the conversation is going to be optimism about what is happening in 2025 and what could be happening in the years beyond because of what's already on the schedule, already on the roster, some of the stuff they're doing on the recruiting trail as well. It just feels like we're like, whoa, the cornerback room is getting ready to take off. While Denzel Burke for 4 years was the only reason it wasn't falling apart. So he's like Cody Simon, except it's on steroids because they kind of needed Denzel Burke to keep the ship steady. So, Stefan, I want to start with you. You only got 1 year of Denzel Burke. Andrew, you got 2 years of Denzel Burke, but we all get the point here. Stefan, how would you define the Denzel Burke era, the Denzel Burke time as an Ohio State football player? Both from his perspective, but also the cornerback's overall perspective.
Yeah, I thought you were about to say something different when you said keep the ship steady. Had you said the other thing, it probably would have applied too. I think that's the perfect way to describe Denzel Burke's time at Ohio State. I mean, he was, in basketball, I think we use the word glue guy to kind of describe someone who's maybe not that good, but like is very important to a team. I think Denzel was very good, but also in some way served as a glue guy just for that room as a whole because of where it was when he got there and how he kind of held it together while also being very talented and producing a ton on the field during his time at Ohio State. So I think we can both talk about how much better the room is maybe this year than years past, while also acknowledging that maybe the reason it's so good is largely in part to what Denzel Burke was able to do the last 4 years. So I think two things can be true of they can be better with Denzel Burke gone, but also would they have ever gotten to this point without Denzel Burke? It's hard to imagine. What he did stepping in as a true freshman at a position that's very difficult to play as a true freshman and to kind of hold that role that he did for this team for 4 years, I think really helped them get to this point. So he's a guy that when you talk about Ohio State's cornerback room in 2025 and beyond, you have to remember what Denzel Burke did because that's kind of the guy that laid the foundation really for this new era of cornerback play at Ohio State.
Sort of the bridge, right? And you had Jeff Okudah as a first rounder in 2019. Damon Arnett was also a first rounder. And then it was just like a wide gaping hole. And on the other side of that large canyon was the future, where you got 5-star recruits and Ole Miss transfers and dogs from Cincinnati, right? And elite recruiting, but someone had to get you over there, right, Andrew? And that's what's essentially what Denzel Burke's purpose ended up being.
Yeah, when you sent us this question, how would you define Denzel Burke's time as a Buckeye? The word that I thought of was spotlight, because it felt like there were moments of Denzel Burke's career where he was really good and that was maybe under discussed. And then it might have felt like right when everybody started talking about him, things went haywire. And like we all have professional allegiances where we root for our teams and whatever. You guys ever like root for a team that's rebuilding or they're not all that good, and then in a few years they become good, they become really good, and one of the guys from the rebuilding team is still around and you're like, well, I didn't think he was still going to be here in 4 years ago, but here we are. And I think that's kind of the way with Denzel Burke. Like, Ohio State was 32nd in pass defense and 43rd in total defense in his freshman season in 2021. I mean, especially for Ohio State, which has more talent than just about everybody in the country. I mean, that's really, really bad. And the people who obviously watched Ohio State in 2021, which is everybody listening, they know how bad that got. And it felt like Denzel Burke was kind of put in the spotlight where most people would not have been put in a spotlight. Going into 2022 and 2023, you started to expect more and you started to expect more. And I think he had a really, really good 23. And then right around the time when people are saying, okay, this secondary is locked and loaded, the Oregon game happens. And we had this conversation, like this existential Denzel Burke Oregon game conversation for months. Like, are we unfair for Denzel Burke? I mean, it was really the only team they played who passed the ball, but it was also only one game. But he also has a career, and it just felt like the spotlight found Denzel Burke at the wrong times for a dude who was really, really solid in his Ohio State career. When you add it all up, I mean, he wasn't necessarily a ball hawk. He only had 4 interceptions in his Ohio State career, but he was part of a national championship team. He was part of a lot of really good defenses, especially in the back half of his career. He had a really nice Ohio State career that when you look at the stats, you'll go, wow, that was great. But it just felt like in the middle of it, everybody was kind of wanting more because everybody looked at Denzel Burke and said, I wish you were better.
You remember when, no, we don't remember this. We were not born. When Michael Jordan left for like 2.5 years to go play baseball, and now Scottie Pippen is the best player on the Chicago Bulls. As Andrew's been watching the documentary way too many times, so now he has suspicions about why Michael Jordan wasn't.
Did Michael Jordan get suspended? We'll never know.
But
I don't actually believe that.
Okay. But the 2 years that Michael Jordan wasn't there, really a year and a half, because he came back in the middle of the 94-95 season, but they won 55 games in 1993-94, and then they won 47 games the following year when he's trying to work his way back in. But that full year he was gone, they won 55 games. They were still the Chicago Bulls. That was 2 less games than they won the year before when they had Michael Jordan. But the difference was once you got to the playoffs, and the reason why they lost in the second round is you don't have 30 points per game anymore. Scottie Pippen is a very good basketball player, 22, 9, and 6 that year, but he's not Michael Jordan. Right? If Scottie Pippen is your second best player, you win 72 games. You three-peat twice. When Scottie Pippen is your best player, you have an awesome regular season and you flame out in the second. And I use that analogy. I think Denzel Burke had to be Ohio State's best corner for 4 years, when if he was their second best corner, now you're cooking with grease. So to your point of the spotlight, Andrew, 198 targets, gave up 112 catches in his career. That's 56.6 completion percentage for 1,366 yards, 441 yards after the catch, only 6 touchdowns, and as you mentioned, 4 interceptions, 23 pass breakups. He also gave up 413 yards this year, which was the first time in his career he had given up more than 400 yards. Granted, they also played more games this year, but also, as you mentioned, Andrew, the Oregon game, where that's the worst game of his career on a day when Evan Stewart had the best game of his career. Imagine
the whole nation also watched that game.
And the whole nation
just like they played against Purdue and he played terribly.
That's like Scotty in the playoffs. The whole world is watching that. What if you would have been right last year and Davis Igbinosun had turned himself into a first-round draft pick? And now Denzel
party on the podcast.
Sure,
saying
but from the Ohio
right.
State perspective, Denzel Burke is now Ohio State's second best cornerback.
Yeah.
And arguably maybe it's third best cover corner with the way that Jermaine Mathews started playing late. But that wasn't his story. What if the recruiting hadn't fallen off a cliff and now you're relying on Cam Brown and Sevin Banks, who Sevyn Banks was maybe in the doghouse, but also dealing with some injuries in 2021. So you don't have to throw Denzel Burke out there as a true freshman. What if the recruiting was good and Denzel Burke didn't have to play until his junior year? We're looking at things very different, but it was a constant. This guy should probably be Robin and he has to be Batman. And now, because of where the room is, whoever is next to be Robin is supposed to be Robin is going to be Robin because there's Batmans all over the roster, especially at the cornerback position.
I think we talked about this, Stephen, with one of our recruiting videos where it's like, it's like a baseball analogy where you have a bunch of 2s and 3s on your starting rotation, and that's great, but you need an ace. You need somebody to put everybody in that position because you can't ask a third starter to go be an ace in a game 1 of a playoff series. That's just not going to work when they're going up against, one of the best pitchers in baseball or something like that. That's just not a recipe for success. So I don't disagree with you, but I also just kind of want to say, like, yeah, I think it would have been fine, to say, okay, well, maybe he was more of a Robin and that would have been his better role. And I think you're right. But he was also their number 1 corner for a little bit, and he wasn't exactly bad at it, I guess was my point. Right. And he was pretty solid for his entire career. But I do think you're right that he was more settled as a 2, and that would have been a much better place for him to be. And it probably would have been a much better place for him to be sitting on the bench in 2021 as a freshman, to where you're not having to play because Ohio State needs you to play. Like we talked about all the time. There's a difference. Jeremiah Smith played because Jeremiah Smith was good enough to play. Mm-hmm. Denzel Burke played because Denzel Burke had to play in 2021 because he was one of the best guys. So it's one of those conversations of, like, for the first 2 years, maybe even you could argue maybe he shouldn't have even seen the field.
I think he should have seen the field. But again, he wasn't bad, but he was a 5th-round draft pick. That's the guy who was holding Ohio State's room together. And it's a kudos to him that he was able to do that. But that's what we're talking about. It's the difference between Jeremiah Smith playing as a true freshman because he's going to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft one day versus a future 5th-round draft pick has to play right away because Ohio State let the recruiting fall off a cliff. That's not Denzel Burke's fault. Denzel Burke was responsible for holding something together that he didn't break. So this is not a slight against Denzel. It's a remembrance, especially at a time right now where it does feel like the fan base has gotten full into the we're mad again because we're not recruiting at a certain level. Where's the highly rated guy at every single position? Remember where we were. Remember where this program was 4 years ago when Denzel Burke had to come in and start right away. Imagine if we were living in a world where Jordan Thomas or Jacob Weatherspoon had to start in 2026. And that's not the world. And they're Denzel Burke. Now, who knows what they're going to turn into. But from a recruiting pedigree, they are Denzel Burke. And no one has brought up the idea that those 2 guys are going to have to start. And if they do start in 2026, the language isn't going to be, oh, no, the room is bad. It's going to be, oh, wait, they were highly underrated. They're starting over 5 stars? That's a different conversation. I want to talk about Jordan Hancock here because he still is a cornerback, even if he was a cornerback who could do safety things. And I guess we'll see how the NFL uses them. Stefan, who are they going to miss more? Denzel Burke or Jordan Hancock?
I actually thought this was pretty simple. I think it's Jordan Hancock. I think the positional versatility is difficult to replace. I think that's where maybe Jordan Hancock was. We kept saying, like, throughout last season that he was underappreciated. I think it got to a point where, like, we said it enough where I think people appreciated what Jordan Hancock was doing.
He was so underrated, we started overrating him.
I think the same thing happened with, like, Ty Hamilton. We were just like, Ty Hamilton, like, stop forgetting about Ty Hamilton. I think at some point our texter was probably like, dude, like, Ty Hamilton's really good. We know.
He's not even the best defensive tackle on the team. Chill out, right?
I think that's a perfect example, though. Ty Hamilton had a 1st-round draft pick he was playing next to. Denzel Burke didn't, but continue.
I think the point is, though, with losing Jordan Hancock, let me start with Denzel Burke. I mean, you lose Denzel Burke, I think we all think that this could even be a position at corner if Jermaine is what he is, if Devin turns out to what he can be, if Aaron Scott plays a role this year and turns out to what he can be, and obviously you still have Davison there. Whereas I think with losing Hancock, we all think highly of Lorenzo Styles. I don't know if we think of him as highly as Jordan Hancock. And if they do move some things around, maybe we see Jermaine some more in the slot. I'm still not sure. Like, Hancock was playing safety, and he was covering the slot. He could have played outside, I think, if they had really needed him to. So, like, what he was able to do with versatility, I think, is harder to replicate than what Denzel Burke did at corner. Because, frankly, when Denzel Burke was banged up later, in the playoff, I think Jermaine stepped in and did an amazing job, right? Whereas if Jordan Hancock had gotten hurt last year, I don't know what the answer would have looked like. I don't know how confident you would have been in and whoever was next up, it was probably Lorenzo Styles. So depth factors into this, where I think they have some more depth at kind of Denzel Burke's spot. But also, I think the versatility is just so hard to replicate. It's so hard to do what Jordan Hancock did. And that's why I think he's the tougher one to replace in this scenario.
Is that the only answer, Andrew?
No, I don't think it's the only answer. I do think it's the answer. I don't think it's crazy for someone to suggest that it is Denzel Burke. I did pick Jordan Hancock. And the reason I picked Hancock was for a lot of the same reasons that Stefan said. So I just don't want to, step on his toes. So I'll make it brief. Jordan Hancock allowed you the ability to play 3 safety looks. Jordan Hancock allowed you the ability to say, if we lose a slot, we have our slot with Hancock, but if we lose an outside guy, we could probably put him out there and be okay. If we lose a safety, we could put Hancock back there and be okay. We can run 3 safety looks with him and be okay. He gave you a lot more, and especially going into a year where you have safety concerns. I mean, let me put it like this. If Jordan Hancock was on this year's team, I don't think it's crazy that Jordan Hancock is starting next to Caleb Downs at safety. I don't think that is that outcome is nuts, where you just say, you know what, man, we got Igbinosun, we got Mathews, and then we're going to play Scott or Sanchez. Those are our corners. Jordan Hancock's going to go play safety. Hip, hip, hooray. I don't think that's nuts, so I think it's Jordan Hancock.
There's also an element here that the person replacing Denzel Burke is a guy who's probably an NFL draft pick. It might even be a higher. This is a situation where you lost a good player and you're replacing him with a very good player versus Jordan Hancock got drafted, and I don't know where we sit right now. We are confident that the guy who maybe replaces him on day one is for sure going to get drafted. That's probably part of this. Okay, let's take a break. That's the past. That's essentially the last 6 years. Jeff Okudah was awesome in 2019, and then you got into the Denzel Burke era. Let's take a break, and then we'll look at the room and where it's headed in 2025 and beyond here on Buckeye.
What does every USAA member have in common? Family. We're one big family who supports the military community and their eligible families. And if you, your parent, or spouse served, you could join our family and save big on auto insurance. Visit USAA.com/join today to check your eligibility. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
This episode is brought to you by Polestar. There's only one true way to experience the all-electric luxury SUV Polestar 3, and that's to take a test drive. It can go from 0 to 60 in as little as 4.8 seconds with the dynamic handling of a sports car. But to truly understand how it commands the road, you need to be behind the wheel. Up to 350 miles of range, the 3D surround sound system by Bowers & Wilkins. It's all something you have to experience to believe. So book your test drive for Polestar 3 today at polestar.com.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means, Stefan Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis. We're talking Ohio State's cornerback room 2025 and beyond. We've been doing this exercise for the last few pods as we've talked about individual players, and I wanted to continue it here. Let's start with Jermaine Mathews. Andrew, you get to go first since I forgot you for a second there. Jermaine Mathews will be blank, and why?
Adjacent and better Jordan Hancock. I think he's going to be a versatile guy. I don't think he's going to be versatile in the way that you move him back to safety, but I think he's going to be versatile in that you're probably going to play him in the slot and you can move him out wide if you need. And, if you have Igbinosun and let's say it's Scott, just to make it easy and not get into the Devin Sanchez conversation yet. If you have Scott and Sanchez on the outside, or Scott and Igbinosun, on the outside, Mathews is in the slot. Aaron Scott tweaks a hamstring. Jermaine Mathews, if you want to keep him in the slot, you can. You could also move him out wide. You can also move him around a little bit. And, one of the things that I think is interesting is the way that football is played today, just conceptually, there are teams' best receivers that play in the slot all the time, right? This isn't, 20 years ago, where the slot receiver is a guy who plays 40% of the snaps and he's 5'9" and he's just shifty and he's not really all that good. And he's just like a fast tight end. And that's kind of their usage in the offense. Jermaine Mathews can be a really, really valuable part to this defense. And I think he's going to be. And I just think his upside at corner is really, really high. So Jordan Hancock was a really, really good football player and somebody that was really, really good. I just think that Jermaine Mathews, I think we're talking about when he gets his time, whether it's this year or the following season, I think we're talking about a high level NFL draft pick, whether that's first, second round, maybe even third round. That's still higher than Hancock. Mathews can play some ball, and I think he's going to be really, really valuable and really, really versatile for Ohio State.
We're going to do, obviously, our starting 22 projections. Market down Mondays are right around the corner. But Andrew, do you think he's going to be the starting nickel this year, or do you think he's an outside corner?
I think he's going to start at nickel. I think they're going to put him in the slot, and I think they're going to go frankly, we talk about this all the time, where it's like, okay, what's your best 11? Jermaine Mathews on the field is their best 11. All due respect to Lorenzo Styles, I think Mathews on the field in the slot is their best 11, and then you have to decide whether you want to put Scott or Sanchez on the outside.
Do you agree with that, Stefan?
I was going to ask you, how soon do you think that's game one?
Yeah,
I think that's game one, snap one. I think Jermaine Mathews starts in the slot game one, snap one. I think if I had to guess right now, I would just say Aaron Scott, and we'll see how fall camp goes. Like that,
Sure.
The first couple Jeremiah Smith, Devin Sanchez reps in fall camp are going to be unbelievably fun. But I think it's going to be. I'll mark down part of it right now. Scott, Igbinosun, Mathews. I think that's their starting trio at corner, and I think that's what you roll with. Just because I think if you're going to preach this whole concept of being our best 11, then I think Jermaine Mathews is one of your best 11 on defense.
I don't know if I agree with that. I get where you're coming from. We've had discussions about it. I don't know if it's week one, snap one. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it later. I don't know. We saw Lorenzo be the top guy at that spot so much in the spring. I don't know how much can change in the fall for that to happen in week one. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case against Michigan or against Penn State. I don't know if it'll be week one, snap one, but
I think it's because part of me wants to push back on that of like, okay, that's the spring. People are learning. They're not really caring about two deeps, but that's not true. It doesn't matter. Is it significantly less important in the spring than it is in fall camp? Like who's lining up where? Sure, but it's still like 60% of what we're talking about here. It's not 2% of the conversation. Jermaine Mathews has been repping at nickel for like 2 years now. So to your point, Stefan, the fact that he has not been the next guy up immediately once the guy who has been the starting nickel corner for the past 2 years, barring what Sonny Styles was doing, the fact that he's not immediately the next guy up and they still had him outside, you almost like bank on maybe he's the starter outside for the Texas game, and by the Michigan game, they see some things differently here. I guess my issue with it is it's an assumption that Aaron Scott is also a better outside corner than Lorenzo Styles is nickel. And I don't have tangible proof of that other than the fact that one was a 5-star recruit going into their second year and one was a former wide receiver turned cornerback. But to be honest with you, Lorenzo Styles is in his third year at Ohio State, and he's been repping this for 3 years. And Aaron Scott, I think Lorenzo Scott's time in Ohio State's system is equal to where Aaron Scott is in his career right now. So that's almost a wash. So in that scenario, do you go older guy that you trust a little bit more when you're playing potentially a number 1, number 2 matchup to start the season? And as the season progresses, you maybe see a little bit more. So I am not 100% sold that Jermaine Mathews is a good nickel. I know he's a good outside cornerback. So do you want to disrupt that when you don't have to?
Does it maybe this is not a good comp, maybe it is, but like it feels like last year, especially after the Oregon game, like Denzel got so much slack, and I think even us too. Like we mentioned, like play Jermaine more. We just kept seeing Denzel, like he kept being the guy. They kept trusting him, and it was paying off. Like I don't know, like Aaron Scott and Devin Sanchez, shiny new toys. It's fun to talk about, but like, what if Lorenzo's just good?
Yeah.
Like they keep putting him out there. Like, what if Lorenzo Styles is just good?
And I don't want to discredit that. This is a good conversation. I don't want to discredit that maybe Lorenzo Styles is just ready for this after 3 years of learning how to play the position. But there's also, I remember when Shaun Wade was playing nickel in 2019, and I think he was one of the best nickels in the Big Ten, maybe even in the country. Like they missed him when he got kicked out of that Clemson Fiesta Bowl in 2019. That doesn't mean it's going to translate to another position because they moved him outside. I remember the 2020 draft when Jeff Okudah got drafted, and the cornerbacks were in a world where the next cornerback up just got placed in the first round of mock drafts because he's the new Ohio State corner. And then Shaun Wade moved outside, and the Jahan Dotson happened, the Indiana game happened, and it was like, oh, wait, no. This guy needs to be inside. So, and I'm applying that logic here of just because a guy's elite at one thing doesn't mean he's going to be elite at another thing. That's what makes Caleb Downs special, is that he's elite at everything. That's what makes JJ special, because he might be elite at everything. But everybody's not built that same way. So if you don't have to move Jermaine Mathews and you can just say, hey, you and Davison are outside, handle Ryan Wingo, I think that's a better option than you think he's a good corner and you think Aaron Scott's a good outside corner right now. just for week one. If they were playing OU and Grambling State the first 2 weeks and if this was 2023, Andrew, and they were building up to the Texas game versus it being week one, I think I might be with you of like, yeah, let Jermaine go out there and figure it out at nickel. But you're playing a prominent opponent week one. So I don't think you have room to experiment in fall camp when you need to go win that football game. Stefan, what's yours? Jermaine Mathews will be blank and white.
I went pretty simple. I just said cornerback 1. I think he's going to be the best corner. We kind of had this discussion yesterday when we were talking about linebackers of what if Sonny Styles just remains this team's second best linebacker?
Yeah.
And Reese just makes that jump and he's number 1 and you know, like kind of how Cody Simon was the best and Sonny was the best. Now it's Arvell's the best and Sonny's the second best. What if Davison just stays number 2 and Jermaine is just this team's best corner? I don't even know if that's really that hot of a take. I think Jermaine's better.
Is he better because you think Davison Igbinosun has hit his ceiling, or is he better because you think there is another level that Jermaine Mathews gets to?
I think it's a combination of both.
That scares me. That really scares me because I think Davison Igbinosun needs to granted, Davison maybe just needs to keep his hands to himself and he's going to be a first round draft pick in April.
Well, I think Davison admitted that by coming back.
Right. So, it doesn't scare me as much because if the only actual issue with a dude who's 6'1", 197 pounds with long arms and looks like what every first-round corner since the beginning of man has looked like, if the only problem is he doesn't know how to keep his hands to himself and he's had a revelation this summer and he has learned to keep his hands to himself, then you know what? This might be one of the best cornerback tandems in college football. So it doesn't scare me as much. And Andrew loves it. At least the Davison Igbinosun part of this. Andrew loves it.
We'll get there.
You see, when I sent this to him, I didn't have a Davison Igbinosun thing on there.
Oh, I noticed. I have a pitchfork where I'm ready to chain that.
There's
in
a
there.
thing. I just didn't want to include it because then it just looks weird if I just include on
I
the
saw the thing and I giggled because I knew where this was going.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's on there.
Unfortunately, more so because of Gillis than me, I'm gonna end up sounding like a Davison hater. Which it is what it is, I guess.
Yes.
I'm not where Gillis is, and it's going to end up making me look like the bad guy, but that's all right. I can handle it.
That is the problem. Whenever somebody's like, this is awesome, this thing or person or entity is great, and then you're like, yeah, it's really awesome, it's really good, isn't it? You just sound like you're like, well, wait a minute. Yeah, like if I say that Jeremiah Smith is the best offensive player in college football and I don't even think anything of it, somebody's going to be like, excuse me? He's the best player in college football, you hater. It's like, well, okay, sure. But I just meant it as the offensive it sounds bad. I get it. But you're going to sound bad.
One thing that's interesting is as we've been talking, EA Sports dropped their top 10 defensive players. Caleb Downs is number 1. He's the highest rated defensive player, which I don't think is too surprising.
Yeah.
But they also released top 5 players by position on defense. And Caleb Downs is the only defensive player for Ohio State to be top 5 at his position, according to the video game. They don't have a top 5 corner. They don't have a top 5 linebacker. They don't have a top 5 edge rusher.
Julian Sand is also not amongst the top 20 quarterbacks, which I think we'll save that. Stefan and I think both of us have some similar thoughts on what the heck is happening here. But there's a quarterback Ohio State's going to face on August 30th who has not played a single prominent game in his career, and he's rated as a 90. And the guy who's a 5-star quarterback is probably going to be Ohio State starter. Isn't even in the top 20. We gotta.
What's the rating of the number 20 player? Or
88. Baylor Sawyer
Robertson.
I mean, and people, the top 10, and before we get back to corners, Cade Klubnik, Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Aller, Sam Levitt, Lenore Sellers, John Mater, Carson Beck, who's a 91, which is hilarious. Navy's quarterback is a 90. Blake Horvath, Arch Manning, and DJ Lagway. Those are the 90s.
Did you say Blake Horvath at Navy is a 90?
Yes. We'll get back. We'll get back.
He's an Ohio State fan. We have to let it go.
He can be. That's fine. We'll get back to that. Okay, back to the cornerback situation.
Good PR is my comment on the quarterback thing. Good PR.
Yeah. Aaron Scott, Stefan, will be in 2025. And
cop-out answer, I said a factor. He's going to factor into this cornerback rotation. I have no idea what it is. If he's a starter by Michigan game, I'm not surprised. If he's a rotational piece, I'm not surprised. He's in an awkward spot. He's in an awkward spot because I think all three of us think Devin Sanchez is really damn good. And we'll get to Devin Sanchez here in a second. But it's where does Aaron Scott factor into this? And is it just a matter of getting to 2026 for Aaron Scott? Or is there a big role for him in 2025?
Okay, can we do something real quick? Let's go into make-believe world for a second. Davis and Igbinosun went pro. So now the top of your room is Jermaine Mathews and Aaron Scott. We're in a world where Bryce West is probably a nickel. So we're going to talk about Bryce West tomorrow. I want to say like that nickel spot's becoming more of a safety position than a corner position right now. So outside of the Jordan Hancock thing, I wanted to save some of that stuff for tomorrow when we talk about the safeties, because if not, we're going to spend a lot of time going Caleb Downs is awesome. Our Malik Hartford and Jalen McClain are good. And then we're kind of – so Davis and Igbinosun has gone pro. Andrew has been wrong. He is not a first-round draft pick. He has mourned that, and we have moved forward with our lives. Your cornerback room is now Jermaine Mathews, Aaron Scott, Devin Sanchez, and Jordan Woods, who just got here this summer. And you've probably added a transfer for the sake of depth in the room. So we'll call that transfer Bob Smith. Actually, no, we'll call him Ryan Smith. Bob Smith just doesn't feel like a cornerback name. Now let's answer that question, because I do think there was no way for you to answer that without it getting to the second part of this conversation of who's going to have more snaps in this game versus the season. So Davis and Igbinosun went pro. Aaron Scott will be blank and why?
A starter.
Okay.
I'll say a week 1 starter.
Okay. Andrew, same thing.
Well, I think actually this is a good question, because I think it goes into what I had for my 2025 answer. And I wrote potentially buried, because let's say that I'm wrong about the Jermaine Mathews slot thing, because like one of those two arguments is going to be right? Like, what if Lorenzo Styles is the starter for Ohio State at the slot in 2025, and Davis and Igbinosun is on the outside? And then, man, is anybody going to be stunned if Jermaine Mathews is that dude on the outside? You shouldn't be. Stefan said cornerback 1. So if you have Mathews and Igbinosun on the outside with Styles in the slot, Aaron Scott's kind of buried. Flash forward to 2026. Jermaine Mathews does not have to go pro. What if the 2026 room has Devin Sanchez and Jermaine Mathews as your starting outside corners, and Scott doesn't go to the inside because he either can't do it or won't do it, or he's not good at it, or Ohio State has a better slot or whatever? You map out, I think, a very realistic path to, frankly, Aaron Scott's a week 1 starter. I don't think that's crazy in 2025 if they do kind of what I suggested, that Aaron Scott, Jermaine Mathews, and Igbinosun are your trio. It's also not crazy to suggest that Aaron Scott wouldn't see the field until his 4th year as a starter unless somebody gets hurt. That is why I'm very interested to see what Aaron Scott's career does, because I wrote down potentially buried, because I know I kind of deviated from Steven's question, but I think it applies. There's a scenario here where there are guys above him that are just better, and you don't get to Aaron Scott is a locked-in starter until 2027.
So what is the difference between Mylan Graham at wide receiver as a former 5-star who didn't play much last year, and now there is a 5-star wide receiver behind him that got some pub this spring, Quincy Porter, who, by the way, did lose his black stripe in the spring. In fact, he was the only true freshman to lose his black stripe in the spring. And Aaron Scott as a former 5-star recruit at corner who didn't play much in year 1. And there is a 5-star freshman behind him who got some pub this spring.
Positional rotation, I guess.
You think there's a better chance that they rotate at wide receiver than they do at corner?
Probably.
I think there's a better chance that they put 4 receivers on the field than 4 corners on the field at one point. So I think he has an easier path.
That's a formation.
I know, but I think he has an easier path to the field.
Yeah, but that's not – I didn't ask like, is there going to be a formation when they put 4 receivers on the field? I mean, they don't do 10 personnel that much, which is why I get so excited when I see it. In fact, I think it's more likely the other way, because other teams do put 4 wide receivers, and Ohio State has to go dime. So there is maybe a better chance of that. But though maybe in that situation, you just put Bryce West on the field as your dime. But I guess we'll see.
I think there's also the element of like Quincy Porter is a 5-star, really good receiver. Devin Sanchez at corner is supposed to be the closest thing to a corner equivalent of Jeremiah Smith. Like, these are not the same. Okay. I don't think these are the same 5-stars.
Okay, that's fine. Then why didn't he lose his black stripe in the spring like Jeremiah Smith?
The culture aspect to it.
Fair. I get if you're going to fall on that end of it, I don't think that's wrong or right. That explains why you are viewing it through that lens of, okay, well, one of them came in with the expectation of like, yo, dude, you might play in year 1. The other one didn't. So even some of the culture aspect stuff you can kind of throw out the window. That's fine, because who knows? August 31st, Ohio State starts fall camp. Devin Sanchez might walk out of that fall camp and day one and lose his black stripe. So we don't know. They have not rotated at corner in the Day era. They did rotate at corner, however, in the Urban Meyer era, especially once Kerry Combs got the room cooking. In 2018, Combs isn't here. His name is Taver Johnson, who is now back in a analyst role at Ohio State. He was the cornerbacks coach back then. The outside rotation was Kendall Sheffield, who played 804 snaps. And then you had Damon Arnett play 584 snaps, and Jeff Okudah as a second-year five-star played 560 snaps. So if we're going to apply that to this hypothetical world we're living in right now, Davis and Igbinosun isn't here, Jermaine Mathews gets the Kendall Sheffield snaps of 804, while Jeff Okudah and Damon Arnett, they're 560 and 584, are where Devin Sanchez and Aaron Scott are. That's how I view it. In 2017, they also rotated the corners. Not as strongly, but they did rotate the corners when you had Denzel Ward. You had Denzel Ward, Kendall Sheffield, and Damon Arnett. Also, they were playing a lot more man back then, so you had to rotate. They don't play strictly man anymore. They play a lot of zone. Denzel Ward played 612 snaps in 13 games. He did not play in their bowl game because they didn't make the playoff, and so he opted out and ended up being a top 10 draft pick. Kendall Sheffield played 633 snaps, and Damon Arnett played 616 snaps. So essentially, Jeff Okudah in 2018 replaced Denzel Ward in the three-man rotating through two spots rotation. In 2016, that was the year where it was like really prominent that they were rotating the cornerbacks. And the reason they were doing it is because they had 3 first-round draft picks at corner. You had Garyon Conley play 599 snaps. Marshawn Lattimore played 598 snaps. And Denzel Ward, as a second-year guy, played 447 snaps. Garyon and Marshawn were first-round draft picks in the 2017 draft. And then Denzel Ward was the first-rounder the very next year. What if this is 2016? The hypothetical we're living in, where you just rotate Jermaine, Devin, and Aaron. 3 guys, 2 spots. What if you just do that anyway? With Davis and Igbinosun, Jermaine Mathews, and Aaron Scott and Devin Sanchez, 3 of those 4 play and they rotate. So now this comes back to a conversation about Devin Sanchez and Aaron Scott. I'm just open to the idea of a 3-man rotation at corner. And Aaron and Devin spend the next 45 days or so, give or take, well, more like 2 months, deciding who's the third guy in that rotation. Who's Denzel Ward 2016? Who's Jeff Okudah 2018 in this situation? Like, who's the third guy?
There was even a little bit of a rotation at the end of last season.
Late.
Some of it because of injury, but like there was a little bit of it.
I think there's room for both of these guys to play. The reason why I brought up what if Davis Igbinosun went pro is because then it gave 3, and so now it's a little bit more prominent. So if we put it in this world, what if Andrew's right and Jermaine Mathews is playing nickel, and then on the outside you're rotating 3 guys? So this is not a problem. I am more open to the idea, and I'm glad you brought that up because I completely forgot they were rotating Jermaine Mathews in late in the year. I am more open to the idea that Tim Walton rotates at cornerback than I am Brian Hartline rotating at receiver because he has never done it. Outside of 2019, when you had true freshman Garrett Wilson and a sophomore Chris Olave, and you had 5th-year seniors Benjamin Victor and Austin Mack, who they were rotating with, they have never rotated receiver here in the Brian Hartline era. So why would they start in 2025 when you have a man-child, a potential first-round draft pick, a slot receiver that the last slot receiver told us was just like him, plus a tight end who might, according to Andrew, have 50-plus catches. So you both seem to be on the side of Devin Sanchez is going to play more than Aaron Scott this season. Is that fair to say?
I think so, yeah.
Do you think that's also the case for the Texas game? So what game does Devin start playing more than Aaron Scott? If you had to mark it down right now.
I'll go as early as the Washington game, their first conference game.
Andrew?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's Grambling State. Like, it would not surprise me if, like, we get to week 1, and I'm glad you included this. I thought this was a good question. Like, this was a good delineation because I think it's going to be Sanchez plays more snaps in 2025, but against Texas, I would not be surprised if we get to that point, and Aaron Scott we see a little bit of what we saw at guard for Ohio State in the college football playoff, where, you know, you have 2 series and then one guy comes in. You have 2 series and then Sanchez comes in. Like, I would not be surprised if Sanchez gets his feet wet, and maybe Sanchez just shows up and balls out and we're like, all right, we need to go with him. But I think Sanchez is the kind of kid where he's probably going to be really good early, and he's probably going to be one of those dudes who's a dude early, We talked about Denzel Burke. He had to play because they had nobody else. Devin Sanchez is going to be the inverse of that, where he's going to play because he might just be better than everybody else. So I think early on, you might want to play it cautious and say, you know what, we're not going to throw this freshman into the fire right away. We're going to get him involved, but we're going to get his feet wet. And if he does well for himself, we're going to see him play against Grambling State, against Ohio. We have a bye week. Then we play out Washington. I think that might be the time to do it. So I would not be surprised if we see Aaron Scott early, kind of mixing in with Devin Sanchez. Aaron Scott maybe gets a little bit more of the reps. And then right after that, it becomes, okay, you know what? Devin Sanchez can handle this. Let's move forward with him.
Are you guys higher on Devin Sanchez or lower on Aaron Scott?
Sanchez.
I think Sanchez.
Sanchez might be just one of those dudes who becomes like this is a locked in top 15 pick when his.
You understand what I'm asking though? It's like,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We are not going like, I don't know, with Aaron Scott, you got to prove it. You got to see it. You got to, it's like we've talked about Jermaine Mathews being like this team's best corner on a team with, we'll get to this in a couple of minutes, like NFL prospects all over the roster.
Sure.
And we've talked about Devin Sanchez being just another one of those dudes. It's a little bit like, you know, like us saying, oh, I think the starting receiving trio is going to be Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, and Brandon Ennis. Oh, are we down on Mylan Graham? No, we're not down on Mylan Graham. He's just in an impossible situation where at like 99% of other schools, he's a starter. If Devin Sanchez is at many, many other schools in the country, he's a week one starter, and it's not even a debate. And if Aaron Scott is at many, many other schools in the country, he's a week one starter, and it's not a debate.
I'm just high on Devin Sanchez. I've let myself buy into the hype. If we go into college football 27 and he's the second highest rated defensive player, I just wouldn't be surprised. Because it's probably going to be Colin Simmons if I were to project.
It will.
Would be number one.
Yeah.
I could see Devin Sanchez being number two.
Okay. All right. Maybe I'm being too cautious. JJ is a high bar, man. It's a high, he's a 98 and he sports his college football game.
I think the thing with Devin, though, is like, he's there physically.
No, for sure. He looks like he could do it.
Yes.
It's
and
just
like when we showed up to the first spring practice, we were like, whoa.
Listen, I am not saying that Devin Sanchez looks like he is one day going to be a first round draft pick. 100%. He looks the part. I just don't want to throw that level of expectation on him this early. Because even JJ didn't have, it's not like JJ played Oregon week one. He had Akron week one. And he dropped his first pass, and then he had a penalty on his second snap. So what's the equivalent of that for Devin Sanchez against Texas? Oh, you give up a 40-yard bomb for a touchdown, and then you have a pass interference call on a 3rd and long that keeps Texas on the field? So now Ohio State's down 10-7?
And we're talking Heisman.
And we're talking Heisman. I think I've just had conversations with people where every single time the word Jeremiah has come out of my mouth, it's been, hold your horses, dude. Like, you can't just be throwing that kid's name on everybody. But I get it. And he gets it too. The way he talked in the spring, he's embracing it while understanding he's running his own race.
You know what I'm about to say, right? You can be the second best defensive player in college football and still not be as good as Jeremiah Smith was last year.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
it's not JJ. It's like, what if tier 2 is just Devin Sanchez and nobody can touch tier 1?
Do you understand what we're saying? JJ might be the best college football player of the past 5 years. When you're just talking raw talent, he might be the best college football. And it's, well, okay, since Ryan Day became the head coach, it's like him, it's Chase Young, Will Anderson. Like, that's what we're talking about. So to say, oh, hey, Devin, and he's wearing number 4, it's just...
what if, let's go back to where we started.
Sure.
What if Devin Sanchez just has a freshman year like Denzel Burks? And maybe it's not going to be out of necessity like Denzel Burks was, but what if the level of production is the same? Is that still not pretty darn good?
It is, but he's not playing. I think that's the difference is, and we talked about it, it's Denzel Burke was that good for a freshman in that environment because you didn't have any other option. And it was almost like hold your breath every time. Like he played David Bell against Purdue and it was like hold your breath until we saw him do it. And it was like, okay, cool. It felt like overachieving a little bit. I don't, if Devin is just as good as Denzel Burke was, I do not think that people are going to be viewing that as an overachievement.
True. Yeah, there's more in front of him.
Right. Just because of how we're already talking about him. So, okay. Man, you guys are real, man. I'll give Aaron Scott some love, man. I think Aaron Scott's going to play a lot this year. And I think last year it's because he got a little humbled in spring practice and got brought back down to earth the way most normal 5 stars do. And now he might be ready.
He also was it against Indiana he got hurt?
He got hurt on a pretty good coverage play.
Yeah.
So
It was like a bad concussion too. I remember he was kind of out of it for a little bit.
yes, he was asleep on the field.
Yeah.
I got some faith in Aaron Scott. I think I am with you, Andrew, that I think Jermaine Mathews long-term is going to end up being their starting nickel. I just don't know if it'll happen week 1 because of who the opponent is. Okay. This is your time, Andrew. Does Ohio State have a day 1 or day 2 pick at cornerback in the 2026 NFL draft? And you have to say who it is in what round and why.
Yeah, I think they do. I think it's Davison.
What round?
I'm just gonna say day 1. I'm gonna stick with it.
Okay.
I think I've mentioned it before. The length is just remarkable. The physicality is remarkable. The size. I think there's just going to be a lot of NFL GMs and a lot of NFL coaches are going to go, well, man, we got a 3-year starter at Ohio State who plays like this and looks like this. We can kind of figure this out. So I think Davison is my pick. But like if Jermaine Mathews is what
if Jeremiah
Stefan
plays cornerback, will he be
yeah. It's one of those things with like LeBron where it's like, you remember those like stories from like 10 years ago where it's like, will LeBron sign with the Cleveland Browns as like a tight end? And it was like, could he play tight end for the Browns? Yeah, that was crazy. I'll say this. If Stefan is right, that Jermaine Mathews is their best corner and their number 1 corner this year, he might be a first-round pick. Like, he might be kind of graded as, dude, you're going to go in the back half of the first round. And, like, all due respect to the brotherhood and the love that Ohio State has and the family nature and all that other stuff, if somebody tells you you're a first-round pick, you're going to go, right? Because that's the whole reason why a lot of those dudes came back, for 2024, with Denzel Burke and Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau. It was obviously, yes, in part, we want to beat Michigan. We want to win the Big Ten. We want to win the national championship. Yes, it was that. But it was also like Denzel Burke straight up said, like, I got a 2nd or a 3rd round grade and I want to come back and get a 1st round grade. Like Jermaine Mathews kind of being in that conversation as well is not crazy to me. It would not shock me if we have 2 guys to talk about for this particular category. One being Davison because he has to go, and the other one being Jermaine Mathews because he might play himself into that kind of role.
Stefan, does Ohio State have a day 1 or day 2 pick at cornerback in the 2026 NFL draft? And if so, which ones and what round?
I think Jermaine goes 2nd or 3rd round. I think he's a day 2 pick, and that's where I'll leave it. I think that's the only one.
I'm going to say no because I think Jermaine Mathews might come back for year 4. I don't know what his measurables are. And I felt myself saying the same thing about Denzel Burke last winter before. I was like, how fast is Denzel? What's his measurables? And they were fine, but they weren't. He had good technique, which is why he was successful for 4 years. I don't. Does Jermaine Mathews look like a 1st-round cornerback? Do the traits pop off?
That's where I want to ask you is I don't know if Jermaine can be a 1st-round pick. And if that's the case, if he's a 2nd or 3rd round projection in the 2025 draft or 2026 draft, does he go? Because is that like what can he do to up his value in 2027?
Does it become a situation where if this is the best it's going to be, I'm just going to go?
Yeah.
Like if he balls out, he gets a 2nd round grade, that might be it.
I think that because these kids get paid now, it does change that a little bit where it's like, okay, if the money is the same, if I'm going to be the 61st pick in the draft and that money is the same as what Ohio State from a rev share, but also what their, NIL third party stuff can get him, then it probably is worth just him coming back for another year and at least trying it because he didn't lose any money. Versus if this were 10 years ago, I'd be with you where it's like, this is what you're going to be. You don't want to hurt it. So you might as well leave. If you combine Jermaine and Davison, they're a top 10 draft pick because Jermaine's got great technique, great instincts. He's a ball hawk.
They're top 5.
Davison, they're Devin Sanchez and Aaron Scott.
Oh my gosh.
Both of those kids, they look like them. You look at Aaron and Devin Sanchez and Aaron Scott, and it's like, yeah, that's what a 1st-round draft pick. That's what a 5-star corner, not 1st-round draft pick, but a 5-star cornerback is supposed to look like. And I don't necessarily think that Jermaine looks like that, but then you watch him play football, and it's like, hey, somebody should take him with the 27th pick in the NFL draft. So I'll say no because I think Jermaine might come back for year 4. And I need to see Davison keep his hands to himself before I start riding that train.
You have to remember illegal contact in the NFL. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah. So I need to see him have the ability to do so because traits can only get you so far. Okay. 2 guys who are hating on Aaron Scott I love how I twist narratives on here with
It's
you guys.
typically how it goes.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break, and then we'll close up with Tim Walton and then also some NFL draft conversations here on Buckeye Talk.
Have you ever spotted McDonald's hot, crispy fries right as they're being scooped into the carton? And time just stands still. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Finding a new job is stressful. But with Indeed, it doesn't have to be. Just fill out your Indeed profile with your skills, experience, and desired salary. The more you fill out, the better your matches will be. And hearing from hiring managers will be 2 times more likely. Relax. That's your Indeed profile sending opportunities your way. Indeed, the world can work better.
We're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means and Stefan Krajisnik and Andrew Gillis. We are talking cornerbacks as part of our State of the Program series. This is the second year we've done this. I like doing it. It's a good way to kind of reset position by position where everything is. Okay, so Brian Hartline is a recruiting madman. Tim Walton has actually been pretty well, too. When you look at their classes, this 2026 recruiting class, Andrew, feels very much like Ohio State's 2022 wide receiver class, where it's a little bit lower rated, kind of like that class of guys where the language of how you talk about them is, hey, it's a little bit more of a developmental class, not developmental class, but guys where check back in on year 3 for them to get on the field. There's not a lot of guys where it's like year 1 is your setup to be a starter in year 2, which is what 2020, 20, and 21 were for Brian Hartline when you got Jackson Smith, the Jigbook, Julian Fleming, G. Scott, Mookie Cooper, Emeka Buka, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Jaden Ballard. You would think of those 7 guys, maybe 4 of them by year 2 are ready to play real football for you, and that's what happened. Jackson was ready to go. Julian dealt with some injuries, or he maybe would have been a little bit more ready to go. And then Marvin Emeka. And then you had Keon Grays, Caleb Brown, Caleb Burton, and Kojo Antwi as in 2022 as more of a developmental group. And none of them ended up getting on the field here. Kojo Antwi lasted the longest before he's now at Colorado State. Keon Grays transferred to California. Caleb Brown transferred to Iowa after 1 year, and Caleb Burton transferred to Auburn. I think he's back in the transfer portal. I don't know where he is at this point, though. But that was that class. And I feel like this 2026 recruiting class with Jacob Weatherspoon and Jordan Thomas looks similar to that. For the sake of their own development in Ohio State's plans, you maybe hope that they don't get to the end of the road and all of them are gone, but that's college football life. And that maybe would be highlighted a little bit more if Naeem Offer hadn't to flip to Oregon on signing day. But still, when you've just had classes where you had Jermaine Mathews, and then you followed it up with Aaron Scott and Bryce West, and then you followed it up with Devin Sanchez, at some point, you need bottom of the room guys. You need a class of developmental guys because everybody can't be superstars. So if that's the trajectory, if 2026 for Tim Walton is what 2022 was for Brian Hartline, do we actually think Tim Walton can rival Brian Hartline's run of talent from a recruiting standpoint? If he continues at this pace, assuming that in 2027, he swings for big fishes again.
I think in spots, I don't think it's ever going to be consistent with rivaling that recruiting run. I mean, you just go look at this, like some of these classes, like, hey, congratulations, Tim Walton. You brought in a top 50 player, Jermaine Mathews. We talked about him maybe being the best corner in this room, number 47 overall player, blah, blah, blah. The number 1 player in that class in the composite rankings was Brandon Innes. And right after that was Noah Rogers. And right after that was Carnell Tate. And then you had Calvin Simpson-Hunt. So I think, yes, you can have those classes where, maybe you go get a 5-star who's in the top 10, and then you go get a borderline 5-star who's in the top 50, and then you end up with a 350 guy. Yeah, you can do that. And yeah, you can absolutely bring in those types of classes. I think the impressive thing with Hartline, though, is that while there have been quote unquote like development years, like you were kind of talking about, there's still always this high level 5-star coming in. There's still always this, oh my goodness, this guy's a superstar player. Even 2023, which didn't have a 5-star in it, you had Innes 38, Rogers 52, Tate 58. That's crazy. Like Jeremiah Smith, number 1, Mylan Graham 33. 2025, Quincy Porter was 23. The 2026 class, Chris Henry Jr. is 15.
Do you view that differently? Because we have to do it by the pace. Like for me, 2023 is Tim Walton's first recruiting class. Okay, so what did Brian Hartline's first recruiting class look like? So here's my if Naeem Offord doesn't flip to Oregon, and so now you're living in a world where, because in 2024, Brian Hartline also had a receiver flip to Oregon, Jeremiah McClain.
Yeah.
So
McClellan, but yeah.
if McClellan, if Naeem doesn't flip, that 2025 cornerback class is Devin Sanchez, who we just spent the last 30 minutes using Jeremiah Smith as a template for what he might do in year one. Whether you agree with whether I agree with it or not, that's the way you guys are viewing him. And you got a 5-star Naeem Offer, who, quite frankly, given what Oregon lost in its second, they lost their whole secondary. So if Naeem Offord and Trey McNutt are both starting and true freshmen at Oregon, given what they lost last year, that's not shocking at all. So if Naeem doesn't flip, who was better? Tim Walton's 2025 cornerback class or Brian Hartline's 2024 wide receiver class?
I think Tim Walton's, because Quincy Porter's great, but Devin Sanchez and
no,
Naeem
2024.
Offord,
Hartline was JJ and Mylan Graham. So it's JJ and Mylan versus Naeem, Devin, and Jordan Woods. Who had the better class?
I'd probably lean Hartline.
I'd still kind of lean Hartline with that.
Is that because we've now seen?
Okay. So let's say this.
Roll highlights of the Oregon Rose Bowl game.
Right. Here's the way to say it. If you land the number 1 player, the number 33 player versus landing the number 8 player.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Because you almost have to take out the fact that we've seen one of these 4 guys play football.
Yeah, like I think if you take away, Jeremiah Smith was an entirely different piece. So I think if you take away the names, it actually is more favorable to Walton. Because I don't remember
you can't take away the names, though.
Yeah, the names are part of the point here.
Well, then if
this
it's the names, then it's Brian
Hartline.
Hartline.
The number 1 prospect.
Yeah.
Well, then if it's the names, I'm taking Hartline because I still lean that.
Because we were talking about JJ like that even before they played.
That's fair. That's
correct. Ryan Day didn't almost faint when Devin signed. Well, granted, Devin had also shut down his recruitment 6 months earlier while JJ was out, seeing every place under the sun. I think you can make a strong case that if Naeem doesn't, that Tim Walton is a 5-star flip away from potentially being able to rival what Brian Hartline did in 2024 and potentially being on pace with Hartline. It's still Hartline. It's still because of the sheer numbers of it. Now, some of that is because of what you need, right? There have been cycles where there's not a cycle that's shown up yet where Ohio State needed 4 cornerbacks. And there have been multiple cycles where Ohio State's needed 4 receivers because that's what happens when you keep sending them out the door to be first-round draft picks. But I don't think it's as far off if Naeem Offord doesn't flip. But he did flip. So I don't think, Stefan, it's a realistic expectation anymore for him to do that.
I think I would agree, yeah.
Man, that would have been an interesting conversation if Naeem was here, though.
There's also an element to the Hartline recruiting that's like, Chris Henry's been committed since 23. Jameer Brown's been committed since 24. Yeah. It's insane to be like, hey, we're going to have at least one 5-star every year, and he's also going to be committed to me, and I'm going to keep him for like 3 years.
And we're
let me say this too.
Go ahead.
The next question that we have that we're going to ask, I think factors into it because Hartline has been not just landing these guys, but also turning them into first-round picks. Mm-hmm. And like, if Tim Walton produces Devin Sanchez and Aaron Scott, and let's say like Jermaine Mathews too, in the first-round picks, like that changes the conversation too. It's like, why would you go somewhere else? That's what the wide receiver thing has become. It hasn't just been like Hartline lands 5-star recruits. Yeah, go to Ohio State. That's where 5-star recruits sign. Okay, what's it matter if Chris Olave doesn't go first round? What's it matter if Garrett Wilson or Jackson Smith and Jigba or Emeka Buka don't go first round? Why would I sign with Ohio State? They keep getting 5-stars and not turning into it.
You know how there's games, now that both of you have covered Ohio State football seasons, where you get to halftime and the game seems a little bit close, even if Ohio State's winning. And then you look up in the middle of the third quarter and Ohio State's up by 28 points. That's part of the argument. That's the third quarter run. Because I do think it's 17-10 at halftime if you're just talking about the recruiting aspect of this. And then you go, Tim Walton's been here for 3 years. By the time Brian Hartline had finished up his third year here, he had 2 first-round draft picks. And he sent another dude to Alabama to go be a first-round draft pick. And he had a dude in his room who was 12 months away from being a first-round draft pick in Jackson Smith and Jigba, and they were calling Marv Super Marv. We're 3 years in, and Tim Walton has a 5th-round draft pick, and I think Jordan Hancock was a 4th-round draft pick, or like early 5th.
4th or 5th, yeah.
Yeah, there's no first, like there's it's where it stops being a conversation of, sure, we're both bringing in 5-stars. My 5-stars hear Roger Goodell say their name. What are you going to do now? Tim Walton's 5 stars just got in the building. And we're already having conversations about which one of their 5-star cornerbacks is going to play more snaps in 2025. So the run can start now. We'll see what happens with Davis and Igbinosin and Jermaine Mathews and Aaron Scott and Devin Sanchez and whoever comes next down the line here. But that's the trump card. You got a few 5-stars? Cool. Your 5-star recruit shut down his recruitment 6 months before signing day. All of my 5-star recruits do that. That's just like normal. This is what it's like. It was sunny and 65 degrees in February in Columbus, and the person from Miami is like, it's 75 degrees and sunny every day in February. What are you talking? I don't even own a coat. What are you talking about?
What do you mean? What is a shovel? I've
Yeah,
never
what is
heard
a
of
shovel,
that before.
dude. What are you talking about? So that's where it trumps. I think Tim Walton can, be competitive on the recruiting trail. But it's to your point, Stefan. It's the consistency, it's the sheer numbers of it, and then it's what we've already seen what the back end looks like, where it's like my 5 stars are first round draft picks. We don't know what your 5 stars are going to be. Last thing, over under 1.5 first round draft picks on Ohio State's 2025 cornerback.
I say under. I think Devin Sanchez is the only one I'm confident in right now.
I said I'm going to have to say over.
Being a first round pick,
Davison.
there's only 32 guys that are first round picks in all of college football.
Listen, but we're college football reporters, and we all forget that when we just decide everybody's a first round draft pick.
Right.
Okay.
I think it's over. I think Devin's one. I think Davison's one. Like Aaron Scott being one is not crazy to me. Jermaine Mathews being one is not crazy to me. So if I'm already saying Davison is one, then I feel like that's just kind of a layup. So over.
You just keep doubling down. I respect it.
He has to.
This surely means good news for when we go to Vegas in a few weeks for Big Ten Media Day, right? That definitely doesn't mean that's definitely not a sign of anything.
That's your prerogative, man. But yeah, see, Stefan, we're college football reporters. Everybody's a first round draft.
Davison wears number 1. Right?
He does.
So that's good. You don't have to keep 4 spades. Davison's number. Double down. There's no 1. We won't count the ace as a 1, so we don't got to worry about.
No, I was gonna say if I get the I get pocket aces. Oh yeah.
I think the safe pick is to take the under. But I'll have some fun with it. I'll take the over, and I say the over is the 2 people who are gonna do it this year are the 2 corners who are gonna play the least amount of snaps. I think maybe Aaron doesn't. I have faith in Aaron Scott, but let's just say you guys are right, and Aaron doesn't play as much this year. Okay, what says he doesn't pop in 2026 and go Marshawn Lattimore with this thing? That's on the table, So who knows?
Aaron Scott popping in 2026. Compared to Jermaine Mathews popping in 2025, the upside of we were talking first round pick with Jermaine.
Yes.
Aaron Scott might have that frame and it might be oh, this is a little different.
What if Devin and Aaron are the same draft?
Because Devin comes back for year 4. I mean, no, because Aaron comes back for year 4. And then this is 2019 when you got Damon Arnett and Jeff Okudah, except they're both 5-star recruits. So they're supposed to do this. I don't think that's crazy at all. In fact, I'm going to mark that down. What is that, the 2028, the year that college basketball video game comes back? 28 NFL draft, Ohio State's going to have 2 first-round cornerbacks. It's going to be Devin Sanchez and Aaron Scott. Get the text, 614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. That'll wrap up the cornerbacks. We'll close things out with our State of the Program series tomorrow with Caleb Downs and the safeties, where I want to continue a conversation that Andrew and I had with the tight ends and also apply it here and give Stefan a chance to have his say, but then discuss the depth of that safety room outside of just Caleb Downs. 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. For Stefan Krajisnik and Andrew Gillis, I'm Stephen Means. That was Buckeye Talk.